The grand throne room stretched as far as the eye could see, its walls made of crystal that sparkled with 1,000 colors. Ben Taylor had never seen anything like it in his 12 years of life. He stood close to Ambassador Richard Hughes, trying not to stare at the strange creatures gathered around them. There were beings with too many arms, others that floated in the air without legs, and some that looked like they were made of living light. All of them had come to present gifts to Emperor Malgrin, the ruler of the Galactic Empire. Ben watched as each species brought forward their tribute. The delegates from the water world of Aquos offered rare crystals that glowed in the dark. The insect-like beings from Hive Prime presented technology that could fold space itself. One by one they laid treasures at the Emperor's feet. Then it was Earth's turn. Ambassador Hughes stepped forward with their simple wooden box. Inside were packets of seeds from Earth's finest crops, small paintings showing human cities and nature, and recordings of classical music from famous composers. Compared to the other gifts, they looked like toys a child might bring to show and tell. Ben heard the whispers start immediately. The aliens around them made clicking sounds, hissing noises, and what he was sure were laughs. His face grew hot with embarrassment, but he kept his head up. Emperor Malgrin sat on his throne high above them. He was massive, at least 15 feet tall, with green and gold scales that shimmered under the lights. His eyes were yellow with black slits for pupils, and when he smiled, Ben could see rows of sharp teeth. Humans, the Emperor's voice boomed across the chamber. Such a primitive species. You come before me asking for autonomy, for the right to govern yourselves without Empire supervision. Yet this is what you bring? Seats? Pictures? Noise. Your Majesty, Ambassador Hughes began, his voice steady despite the mocking laughter around them. These gifts represent what humanity values most. Life, beauty, and culture. We may not have advanced technology yet, but we have. Enough. The Emperor raised one clawed hand. I grow tired of pretty words. You want freedom? Very well. I shall give you a sporting chance. He pressed a button on his throne, and the floor in the center of the room became transparent. Below them, Ben could see a deep pit carved into the rock. It was dark down there, lit only by red emergency lights that made everything look like a nightmare. Something moved in that darkness. Something big. Behold, the Emperor said, his voice filled with cruel amusement, the Void Stalker. A creature from the darkest corners of space. We captured it 3 months ago after it destroyed 2 of our military ships and killed 47 of my best soldiers. The creature came into view and Ben's breath caught in his throat. It was like nothing he had ever imagined. Its body was covered in scales so black they seemed to absorb light itself. It stood on 4 powerful legs, each ending in claws as long as Ben's arm. But the most terrifying thing was its head. It had 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows, all glowing with an eerie green light. When it opened its mouth, Ben saw teeth like daggers. The Void Stalker paced back and forth in the pit, moving in jerky, aggressive patterns. It would charge at the walls, slam into the invisible barriers, and roar in frustration. The sound made Ben's bones vibrate. No one has ever tamed a Void Stalker, the Emperor continued. They cannot be trained. They cannot be controlled. They exist only to hunt and kill. My beast masters refuse to even enter the same room with it. The Emperor leaned forward on his throne, his yellow eyes fixed on the human delegation. Here is my challenge, little humans. Tame that beast by sunset today. Make it obey you. Do this and I will grant Earth full autonomy and a seat on the High Council. You will have power and respect across the galaxy. The stairs leading down to the Doom Pit were made of cold metal. Each step echoed as Ben walked deeper into the darkness. Above him, he could see thousands of faces pressed against the transparent floor, watching him descend. They looked like they were watching a show, waiting for something exciting to happen. The air grew warmer as he went down. It smelled strange, like burnt metal mixed with something wild and animal. Ben's hands were sweating, but he wiped them on his pants and kept going. When he reached the bottom, a heavy door slid open with a hiss. Ben stepped through and it closed behind him with a loud clang that made him jump. Now he was alone in the pit with the Void Stalker. The creature was even more terrifying up close. It stood at the far end of the pit, its 6 glowing eyes fixed on him. It was huge, at least 12 feet tall, with a body covered in scales so black they seemed to drink in the light. Its muscles rippled under its skin as it moved, and Ben could see every sharp claw, every pointed tooth. Above, he could hear the aliens making excited noises. He knew they were placing bets on how long he would survive. Some probably gave him 5 minutes. Others maybe 2. But Ben didn't run. He didn't shout or wave his arms. He didn't try to look big and threatening like some people did with dangerous animals. Instead, he walked slowly to the side of the pit, sat down on the floor and crossed his legs. Then he just watched. The Void Stalker seemed confused by this. It had probably expected the small human to attack or to run away screaming. Instead, the boy just sat there calm and quiet. The creature began to pace again, moving in circles around the pit. Every few seconds, it would charge at the walls where invisible electromagnetic barriers kept it contained. Each time it hit the barrier, there was a crackling sound and a flash of blue light. The stalker would roar in frustration and then start pacing again. Minutes passed. Then 10 minutes. Then 20. Above, the aliens were getting restless. They had expected action, blood, something exciting. This was boring. Some of them started to leave, deciding it wasn't worth watching a human boy sit on the floor doing nothing. But Ben barely noticed them. His eyes were locked on the creature, studying every movement, every sound, every behavior. This was what his mother had taught him. Watch first, she always said. Animals tell you everything you need to know if you just pay attention. His father had taught him too, during the long hours at the colony's veterinary center. Pain changes behavior, his father would explain while treating injured creatures from different worlds. An animal acting aggressive might just be an animal that's hurting. Ben watched the way the Void Stalker moved. It was powerful and fast, yes, but something was wrong. Every time it turned to the left, it moved a bit slower. Every time it hit the barrier, it hit the same spot on the left side of the pit. And when it paced, it kept its left shoulder hunched slightly forward. An hour passed. Most of the aliens had left now. Even Emperor Malgrin had stopped watching, confident that nothing interesting would happen. But Ben had seen what he needed to see. The creature wasn't just angry. It was in pain. Something was wrong with its left shoulder, and it was trying desperately to fix it by scraping against the barrier in that one spot. Ben's heart ached for the creature. It wasn't a mindless monster. It was a living being in distress, trapped in a cage, hurt and unable to help itself. He decided to try something. Back on the colony, he had learned that many animals across different worlds responded to certain sounds. Not words because they didn't understand language, but tones and frequencies that communicated peaceful intentions. Ben started making soft clicking sounds with his tongue against the roof of his mouth. Click, click, click. Slow and rhythmic. He had heard the Void Stalker making similar sounds but deeper and lower. He tried to match the pattern. Click, pause, click, click, pause. The creature stopped pacing. Its 6 eyes, which had been glowing with that angry green light, suddenly focused entirely on Ben. The boy's heart jumped into his throat, but he didn't stop. He kept making the clicking sounds, keeping his body relaxed and non-threatening. He didn't stare directly at the creature either. His mother had taught him that direct eye contact could be seen as a challenge or a threat to many species. Click, pause, click, click, pause. The Void Stalker took one step toward him. Then another. It moved slowly, cautiously, its massive head lowered slightly. It wasn't charging. It wasn't attacking. It was approaching carefully, like it was trying to understand what this strange small creature was doing. Ben's hands trembled, but he kept them still in his lap. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to get away from this predator that had killed dozens of trained soldiers. But he stayed seated, kept making the soft clicking sounds and waited. The stalker came closer. Ben could now see details he couldn't see from far away. He could see old scars on its scales. He could see how one of its eyes had a slightly different glow than the others, like it might be damaged. He could see very clearly now how it protected that left shoulder. When the creature was about 10 feet away, it stopped. It tilted its head to one side, studying Ben with all 6 of its glowing eyes. Then, for the first time since its capture 3 months ago, something changed in those eyes. The rage faded. The aggressive glow dimmed just a little. And in its place, Ben saw something else. Something that made his throat tight and his eyes sting. Curiosity. Hope. A desperate need to connect with something, anything that wasn't trying to hurt it. The Void Stalker made a sound, a low rumbling click that echoed Ben's pattern. It was answering him. Ben stood up slowly, very slowly, like he was moving through thick water. He kept his hands where the Void Stalker could see them, palms open and empty. No weapons. No tools. Just a 12-year-old boy and his bare hands. Easy there, he whispered, his voice soft and gentle. I'm not going to hurt you. I promise. He took one small step forward. The creature watched him with all 6 eyes but didn't move. Ben took another step. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might burst out of his chest, but he kept his breathing slow and steady. The Void Stalker was so close now that Ben could feel the heat coming off its body. He could smell it too, a strange mixture of something like cinnamon and burning rubber. Each breath the creature took sounded like wind rushing through a tunnel. "I'm here to help," Ben said quietly, taking another tiny step. "I know you're hurting. Let me see." When he was just a few feet away, Ben stopped and slowly raised his right hand. He held it out, palm up, fingers relaxed. It was an offering, a gesture of peace. He had done this hundreds of times with frightened animals back on the colony, but never with something that could tear him apart so easily. The Void Stalker leaned forward. Its massive head came down until it was level with Ben's outstretched hand. Then its tongue came out. Ben had to force himself not to flinch. The tongue was long and dark purple, covered in small bumps that he knew were chemical sensors. Many alien species used their tongues to taste the air and learn about their environment. The stalker was trying to understand what Ben was. The tongue touched his palm, and Ben felt a strange tingling sensation spread across his skin. It was wet and rough, and he could feel each individual sensor bump as the creature tasted his sweat, his skin, his scent. One bite. That's all it would take. One snap of those jaws and Ben's hand would be gone. But the creature didn't bite. Instead, it made a sound, a low rumbling that came from deep in its chest. It wasn't aggressive. It almost sounded like the purring of a cat, but much, much deeper. Ben let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Good," he whispered. "That's good. Now let me look at your shoulder, okay?" He moved carefully to the creature's left side, the side it had been protecting. The stalker turned its head to watch him but didn't pull away. Up close, Ben could see the problem clearly now. There was a device embedded in the creature's shoulder, right where the scales met the thick muscle underneath. It was made of dark metal and had small lights blinking on its surface. Ben recognized it immediately. His mother had shown him pictures of neural suppressors before. They were supposed to calm aggressive animals by sending gentle signals to their nervous system. But this one wasn't working right. Ben could see where it had partially fused with the stalker's scales, becoming part of its body in a way it was never meant to. The flesh around it was red and swollen. Some of the scales had turned gray and fallen off. And worst of all, Ben could see the device sparking slightly, sending random electrical pulses into the creature's nerves. "Oh no," Ben breathed. "That must hurt so much." No wonder the creature was acting violent. It wasn't naturally aggressive. It was being constantly shocked, constantly hurt, driven mad by pain it couldn't escape. Ben felt anger rise in his chest. Who would do this? Who would put a device in a living creature and then not even check if it was working properly? But anger wouldn't help now. He needed to focus. "Okay," Ben said softly, reaching out toward the device. "This is going to hurt at first, but then it'll feel better. I promise." His fingers touched the metal and the stalker flinched. It pulled away slightly, a warning growl building in its throat. I know," Ben murmured, keeping his voice calm and soothing. "But we have to get it out. Please trust me." He touched it again, and this time the creature held still. Ben could feel it trembling under his hands, but it didn't move away. Somehow, impossibly, it understood that he was trying to help. Ben started working at the device with his fingernails, trying to find where it connected to the flesh. The metal was slippery with blood and other fluids. His fingers kept slipping off. He gritted his teeth and tried again, digging his nails under the edge of the suppressor. Pain shot through his hands as his fingernails bent backward and tore. He felt blood, his own blood, running down his fingers and mixing with the blood from the creature's wound. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. The Void Stalker made a sound, a high-pitched whine that reminded Ben of a dog in pain. It flinched and started to pull away. "Please," Ben said, his voice cracking. "Please stay still. Just a little longer." The creature looked at him with those 6 glowing eyes. Then, incredibly, it settled back down and held still again. Tears were running down Ben's face now, partly from the pain in his hands and partly from the trust this magnificent creature was showing him. He worked for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Pull, twist, wiggle the device. Feel it give just a little. Pull again. His hands were covered in blood now, and he couldn't tell which blood was his and which belonged to the stalker. Finally, he felt something shift. The device moved, just slightly, pulling free from where it had fused with the scales. "Almost there," Ben gasped. "Almost." He pulled hard, using all his strength, and with a wet cracking sound the neural suppressor came free. The Void Stalker threw its head back and roared. The sound was so loud that the entire palace shook. Dust fell from the ceiling of the pit. Above, Ben could hear shouting and the sound of weapons being powered up. The guards thought the creature was attacking. Ben dropped the bloody device and stumbled backward, his ruined hands held up in front of him. This was it. This was where he died. But the creature didn't attack. Instead, it looked down at its shoulder where the device had been. The lights in its eyes changed, going from that angry green to something softer, almost blue. It moved its shoulder experimentally, rolling it back and forth. No pain. No shocks. Just freedom. The stalker turned to look at Ben. Then it lowered its massive head and gently, so gently, pressed it against the boy's chest. That deep rumbling sound came again, but louder now, happier. It was purring. Ben's legs gave out and he sat down hard on the floor. His hands hurt terribly and he was crying, but he was also laughing. He wrapped his bloody arms around the creature's snout and pressed his face against its scales. "You're okay now," he sobbed. "You're free. You're finally free." The metal door at the top of the doom pit slid open with a hiss. Ben walked through it, his hands still bloody and torn, his shirt covered in dirt and the creature's blood. Behind him, moving as quietly as something that size could move, came the Void Stalker. The throne room, which had been filled with noise and chatter just moments before, went completely silent. Every alien in the chamber turned to stare. Some of them had multiple mouths, and all of those mouths hung open in shock. Ben walked across the transparent floor toward the Emperor's throne. His legs felt shaky and weak, but he kept his head up. The Void Stalker followed him step by step, its 6 eyes scanning the room but staying calm. It walked beside the boy like a dog walking beside its owner, like this was the most natural thing in the world. Ambassador Hughes stood near the throne, his face pale but relieved. He had clearly been worried sick. When he saw Ben walking and alive, his whole body seemed to relax. Emperor Malgrin stood up from his throne. His scaled face, which had been amused and mocking before, now looked twisted and ugly with anger. His yellow eyes were wide, and his clawed hands gripped the arms of his throne so hard that the metal bent. "Impossible," he roared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "This is some kind of human trick. Some technology we didn't detect." Ben stopped at the base of the throne stairs. He was so tired he could barely stand, but he looked up at the Emperor without fear. "No tricks, Your Majesty. No technology. Just patience and kindness." "Lies." The Emperor pointed one clawed finger at Ben. "That creature is drugged or controlled somehow. That's not true taming. Make it perform tricks. Make it submit to you. Make it obey your commands." Ben took a deep breath. His hands hurt so badly he wanted to cry, but he kept his voice steady. "I didn't tame it, Your Majesty. I befriended it. There's a difference your empire has forgotten." The Emperor's face grew darker. Around the throne room, aliens whispered to each other. Some nodded. Others looked confused, but they were all listening. Ben turned to look at the Void Stalker. The creature looked back at him with those 6 glowing eyes, now showing a soft blue color instead of angry green. Ben reached up, even though it hurt his damaged hands, and gently touched the stalker's snout. "You can go," Ben said softly. "You're free now. The thing that was hurting you is gone. You don't owe me anything. You can leave this place if you want." The throne room was so quiet that Ben could hear his own heartbeat. The Void Stalker looked at Ben for a long moment. Then it looked at the open passages leading out of the palace, at the windows showing the sky beyond. It could run. It could escape. It could leave this place where it had been trapped and tortured for 3 months. But the creature didn't move toward the exits. Instead, it stepped closer to Ben and lowered its head, gently pressing against the boy's shoulder. It made that deep rumbling purr again, a sound of contentment and trust. The choice was clear. The stalker was staying because it wanted to, not because it had to. Several aliens in the court made surprised noises. A few even started to clap or make their species' version of applause. They understood what they had just witnessed. This wasn't control or dominance. This was friendship freely given. Emperor Malgrin's face turned a darker shade of green. His whole body shook with rage. "No," he shouted. "This is unacceptable. The terms were not met. This is not taming." Ambassador Hughes stepped forward. "Your Majesty, you said the boy had to tame the creature by sunset. He did exactly that. The creature follows him willingly and peacefully. The challenge is complete." "I said nothing about befriending." The Emperor's voice was getting louder and more desperate. He knew he was trapped by his own words, spoken in front of hundreds of witnesses. "I said tame. Tame means control, obedience, submission." "Then Your Majesty used the wrong word," Ben said quietly. His voice was small compared to the Emperor's roar, but somehow it carried through the chamber. "Because what you had before wasn't a tamed creature. It was a tortured prisoner. There's a difference." The Emperor's eyes blazed with fury. He had been made to look foolish in front of his entire court. His pride, his power, his honor, All of it was crumbling because of one small human child. "Seize them!" he screamed, pointing at Ben and the ambassador. "Guards! Kill the beast and throw these humans in prison. Now!" A gasp ran through the throne room. The High Chancellor, an old alien with 4 eyes and gray skin, stood up from his seat. "Your Majesty, you cannot. You gave your word before the High Assembly. To break an oath. I don't care." The Emperor was beyond reason now. "Guards, obey me." Armed guards began moving toward Ben from all sides. They carried weapons that glowed with blue energy. They moved carefully, nervously eyeing the Void Stalker. The creature saw them coming. It stepped in front of Ben, placing its body between the boy and the guards. Its eyes changed back to that angry green glow, and it let out a roar that shook the windows. The guards stopped, their weapons raised but their hands trembling. Nobody wanted to be the first to attack. Then something happened that nobody expected. From the entrance to the Doom Pit, where the door was still open, came another roar. Then another. Then a third, this one higher pitched and younger. 3 more Void Stalkers emerged from the shadows of the pit. 2 were larger than Ben's companion, their scales darker and their eyes fiercer. They moved together, clearly a mated pair. The third was smaller, probably a juvenile but still dangerous. Ben had freed their companion. They had heard its call of relief and joy. And now they came to answer. The 4 stalkers moved together, forming a circle around Ben and Ambassador Hughes. They faced outward, toward the guards, toward the Emperor, toward anyone who might threaten the small human who had shown kindness to one of their own. The throne room erupted into chaos. Aliens screamed and ran for the exits. Guards shouted orders at each other. Some raised their weapons, others backed away. The Emperor was yelling, but his words were lost in the noise. And in the center of it all, surrounded by 4 of the galaxy's most dangerous predators, stood a 12-year-old boy with bloody hands and a tired smile, who had just changed everything. The chaos in the throne room reached a peak as guards raised their weapons and aliens scrambled for safety. The 4 Void Stalkers stood in a protective circle around Ben and Ambassador Hughes, their eyes glowing with warning. The air crackled with tension, and it seemed like violence was about to explode. Then a voice cut through the noise like a knife through butter. "Your Majesty, stop." It was the High Chancellor, the old advisor who sat at the Emperor's right hand. He stood up from his seat, his 4 eyes blazing with authority. Despite his age and small size compared to the Emperor, his voice commanded attention. The room began to quiet down. "You gave your word before the High Assembly," the Chancellor said, his voice carrying to every corner of the throne room. "You made a public oath, witnessed by delegates from 100 worlds. To break that oath now would be the gravest dishonor." Emperor Malgren's face was still twisted with rage, but he stopped shouting. His clawed hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. The Chancellor continued, speaking not just to the Emperor but to everyone in the room. "If you break your word, Your Majesty, your rivals will have grounds to challenge your rule. The Council of Planets could vote to remove you. Everything you have built could crumble." The Emperor stood frozen, like a statue made of angry green scales. Around him, delegates from dozens of worlds whispered to each other behind their hands, tentacles, and various other appendages. Ben could see the calculation happening in the Emperor's yellow eyes. Pride fighting against survival. Rage fighting against reason. The moment stretched out, feeling like forever. Ben's heart pounded in his chest. He could feel the Void Stalkers around him, tense and ready to fight if the guards attacked. His hands throbbed with pain, but he barely noticed. Then Ben spoke. His voice was quiet, but in the tense silence, everyone heard him clearly. "You said I could have your planet if I tamed the Predator," Ben said, looking up at the Emperor with steady eyes. "I don't want your planet, Your Majesty. I just want your word to mean something." The Emperor's eyes snapped to Ben. For a moment, the boy thought he might have made things worse. But then something shifted in the Emperor's expression. The raw fury began to fade, replaced by something more complicated. Respect maybe. Or at least recognition. Ambassador Hughes saw his chance and stepped forward quickly. "Your Majesty, if I may speak?" The Emperor waved one clawed hand impatiently. "Speak." "What my young friend accomplished today shows something important," the ambassador said, choosing his words carefully. "He solved a problem that your best warriors and beastmasters could not. He turned a deadly enemy into a loyal ally. Not through force, not through weapons, but through understanding and compassion." The Emperor's eyes narrowed, but he was listening. Ambassador Hughes continued. "We propose a treaty. Grant Earth full autonomy and self-governance. Release the Void Stalkers to a sanctuary world where they can live in peace. and establish new guidelines for how the Empire treats intelligent species, including those you call beasts. And what does Earth offer in return? The Emperor asked, his voice cold. Our expertise in difficult cases, the ambassador said with a slight smile. It seems we have skills your empire lacks. Skills in communication, in understanding, in finding peaceful solutions. We could be valuable allies. The throne room was silent again as the Emperor considered this. Ben watched the alien ruler's face, seeing the thoughts moving behind those yellow eyes. The Emperor was trapped, yes, but Ambassador Hughes had just offered him a way out that didn't look like complete defeat. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Emperor Malgrin sat back down on his throne. His posture was still stiff, still proud, but the fury had drained away. Let it be recorded, he said, his voice formal and measured. Earth receives full autonomy and self-governance. The Void Stalkers are to be released to Sanctuary World Gamma 7, where they will be protected by Imperial decree. And an advisory council on the treatment of sentient species will be established, with human representatives included. The High Chancellor immediately began recording the decree on his data pad. Around the throne room, delegates started to applaud. Some seemed genuinely impressed. Others were probably just relieved that the crisis had been avoided. Ambassador Hughes bowed respectfully. Thank you, Your Majesty. Earth accepts these terms. Ben felt like his legs might give out from relief. They had done it. Earth was free. The Void Stalkers were saved. Nobody had to die today. As the formal ceremonies began, with documents being prepared and official seals being placed, Ben sat down on the floor, exhausted. The 4 Void Stalkers relaxed their protective stance. The 2 large adults moved back toward the Doom Pit entrance, ready to return to their home. The juvenile, however, stayed close to Ben. The young stalker, smaller than the others but still bigger than a horse, pressed its head against Ben's shoulder. It made that rumbling purr sound again, refusing to leave even when the adults called to it. I think you've made a friend, Ambassador Hughes said with a tired smile. Ben reached up with his bloody hands and stroked the creature's scales. They felt warm and smooth. Shadow, he said softly. I'll call you Shadow. The young stalker's eyes glowed bright blue, seeming to accept the name. Hours later, as preparations were made for Earth's delegation to leave, Emperor Malgrin stood on his private balcony overlooking the landing platforms. His High Chancellor joined him, and together they watched as the human shuttle prepared for departure. That child defeated me, the Emperor said quietly, his voice thoughtful rather than angry now. He defeated me without weapons, without cunning, without any of the things I respect. He did it with compassion. The Chancellor nodded. Yes, Your Majesty. He showed kindness where we showed only dominance. He saw a suffering creature where we saw only a weapon. The Emperor's claws tapped against the balcony railing. If humans wield that power as naturally as we wield military might, then it is wisdom to have them as allies rather than enemies, the Chancellor finished. Indeed. They watched as the shuttle lifted off, carrying Ben Taylor and his new companion back to Earth. The boy would return home a hero, famous across his world and many others. But more importantly, he had proven something that would change how the galaxy saw humanity. Earth's greatest strength was not in weapons or technology or military power. It was in their ability to connect, to understand, to find common ground even with the fiercest and most dangerous beings in the universe. Where others saw monsters, humans saw potential friends. Where others saw problems to destroy, humans saw problems to solve. And that, Emperor Malgrin realized as the shuttle disappeared into the stars, made them the most dangerous and valuable allies anyone could have.